I wanted to have conversations, ask people, how did you survive and thrive here in this kind of mixed message environment where you're loved and you're hated? You get embraced,
Right.
you get pushed
And
away.
I think we also need to take people back to why people come, because I think America, when you live in America as an immigrant, sometimes you start to question yourself.
Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library.
We don't hear people relieving the joy, like the gratitude, just everything for people that immigrated as adults that had a choice, everything it meant to you to come here. Like, people are coming here to contribute. People are coming here because they have so much to have, they see opportunity, and that's a good thing, right?
And
Now,
there's not a lot of
shame,
conversation around that.
there is not a lot of conversation. And so, again, it's also why I love your podcast. You're still talking about immigrant experience, immigrant stories, the real immigrant stories, not the narrative that the media puts out there. And I think this conversation was not scripted this way, but I think this is a conversation that we need to be having in 2025 anyway, because you and I are kind of aligned in that. Let's shifting the narrative away from immigrant being a dirty word to immigrant being what it is, a beautiful word, a word that represents so many things for so many people, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. We come with a lot of energy. I mean, check out the stats that Forbes magazine puts out about immigrant contribution. Like, just if you use ChatGPT, just do it, or go to Google. They have Gemini. Just Google, what are the contributions of immigrants?
Right.
I mean, amazing. And I have some in my book. You know, how many businesses, immigrants are more likely to start small businesses. The Kaufman Foundation tracks entrepreneurship of immigrants and how many business and contributions that they're making, how hard the children of immigrants work to make it into higher education, higher institutions, and
enrollment, and then performance within colleges. And unfortunately, some of these things are being overshadowed by negativity. And I think we also don't talk about I think part of why I focus on empowering immigrant professionals to thrive in the corporate world is also that people don't get that sometimes people, out of necessity, out of a negative experience, out of a gap, they start these businesses, and it's what drives them to make it successful is because they want to support others, and they had a negative experience either in corporate America or in America as a whole. And they end up creating something that adds value and jobs and contributes so much to the economy. So, there's two sides of it. Is people, immigrants, have experiences that make them recognize a need and identify a gap. And then the things that these experiences that are negative have also brought forth in them is resilience and that determination to make this work and to make other people not have to go through what they went through.
Right. And I think about there's a term there, and I think perhaps people from collectivist cultures have a way of being able to multitask a little bit more than people who might be born and raised in individualistic cultures. I was coming across some research about that recently. Like, when you talk about monochromatic time, which is more linear, and then polychromatic time, where people are more focused on relationships and community building and so forth like that. And you will find people being able to juggle multiple things at the same time, versus in the West, it's more focused about work, and you build your life and adjust your life around work. Work is a priority, right? And then community is even more less, because we feel, I've had seasons where I felt very isolated and just in my little silos. And I've had to travel to go be with family or actively connect and build my own community around me, right? And so that's what the podcast basically came out of. I just recognized there was this huge vacuum about the positive contributions. And I was really shocked, interestingly, because I was like, a lot of immigrants I know are doing amazing things. They're in their H-1Bs, filling a huge gap in the economy. They're studying, working hard. The people who are doing the roofing and the landscaping, and I don't ask people questions about whether they're legal or illegal or out of status or in status, but I can tell by just observing that there's a lot of people doing some very hard things to support our country, and it wasn't being talked about. And so I wanted to fill that space. So then birthed the Immigrant Experience in America, and we now have over 180 episodes streaming globally and have spoken to many people around the world about what their experience has been moving away from home and living in a new country. So check us out there. And yes, so we talked about what pushed me out to start the podcast, and here we are today.
Yeah. Okay. And if you're listening, I would have a link in the show notes that would lead you to the podcast, but you can also look it up on your favorite podcast platform. There's so many stories there, and I think I was on in 23 sometime.
Yeah, you were one of my first year. You were on in my first year.
And that's how I met you, and I found you. And I think that was like the only podcast I could find about immigrant experience. There's a few now, but that's been one of the most consistent. So kudos to you for keeping that going in the midst of everything else, including still holding full-time job steady, because podcasting itself, it's another job. And then
it sure is.
So we could go on and on, because you bring so much to this conversation, but I also wanted to kind of maybe package it as advice for professionals as we start to wind down, as we talk about corporate professionalism, 9-to-5 jobs, businesses, passion, interest. What are some of the things that have helped you along the way that you would like to encourage people that identify with you as maybe a mom, maybe an immigrant, maybe a professional? What are some of the things that helped you? What are some of the tools and skills? And what advice will you give to young professionals now who are trying to navigate career?
Oh, this is a different
It's
world.
like I got so much.
Yeah, it's a different world. This is a different world. And I think when first generation immigrants come in, we put so much energy into first arriving here. So you may come in as an H-1B, for example. Department of Labor may advertise the job. You apply at the embassy, you get hired, then you go for they help you get your H-1B, for example, or whether you're an international student, getting your F1, or in many other ways, or for family reunification. My family came to join our previous family who were here before. My dad had to wait like 12 years until the visa number came current. And so we all came in with everything. So there's a lot of money. I want to underline, there's already a lot of money involved in the process to go through the embassy and get cleared. You have to pay a lot of money medically that I think a lot of people don't know who've never come through the process. So for any U.S. citizen or people from around the world who might be operating from a place of ignorance because you just don't understand, there's a lot of money that goes into going through the process, right? And we're cleared by the U.S. government to come in. And then you come in and you're full of energy and excitement and ready to just add value, right? Get your family started. Mm-hmm. But I think I was so naive, right? Because I didn't know the ground that I was getting into. I didn't understand the culture. I learned as I went along. And it took me over 10 plus years to start realizing that I was dealing with discrimination, microaggressions, even to learn the words to say, I don't feel like myself anymore. I was so energetic, ready to take on the world, just want to study and contribute. And then over time of just dealing with rude and nasty people, it started wearing you down. And so my first advice is, if you're an aspiring immigrant, wherever you're listening to this podcast, right? It's so essential that you take time to educate yourself about what life is like on the ground. And that's why my podcast exists. That's why Lola's podcast exists and others who are out there. get as much information about what life is like in any particular country that you're moving in. Don't just be, most people are so excited and they stay in the space of being happy and excited, but they never look at the reality of how challenging it's going to be for you. And particularly as a more melanated person, it's not an easy place. Living abroad is not for the weak, the faint of heart. It makes I don't even know what to call it. I call it the alchemistic journey. There's a book out there called The Alchemist. And it really transforms you into something else that you don't even know that you're becoming. And so take time to learn your environment, educate yourself, find your community as much as you can as soon as you get here, or even prepare ahead of time to make sure you have connections on the ground.
Yeah. I will try to caveat what you're saying, the advice you just gave, because we are in a world right now where people are moving around. It's a global world. So I think a lot of people, when I bring guests and we talk about different intersections, sometimes my guests are not immigrants. So the podcast is not just for immigrants, and it's not just immigrants that are being interviewed. But I always tell people, you never know where you will end up. And so you can travel to another country. Work might take you to another country. You might get an opportunity to do a work study or to do an internship. It's a global world of work we live in now. And also, I love what you're saying, because this is applicable to everybody who is a professional.
Yes,
right now.
Because the global marketplace oftentimes forces us to go where the work is.
Yes.
And a lot of times for people who want to advance in their career, sometimes part of the requirement is that you might need to do an externship or a TDY overseas or somewhere. And some companies, you might have to move with the company if you want to get a different roles, and it sometimes is overseas. So, so really educate yourself about what's going on the ground. And with the world of social media and everything that's been publicized, just try to really get a hold of, is this the right fit for you? Because a lot of times in a job space, you go to the interview thinking that the power lies solely with the employer. But I like to remind people that you also come to the table with power. You also need to evaluate that employer, that workspace, the culture that potentially exists in that place. Is it going to be for you? Are you going to have psychological safety there? Are you going to be able to express yourself and thrive and really contribute and be celebrated? What are some concerning issues that might arise after you get in the door and you say yes? So make sure that you are also investigating and interviewing when you go for job interviews, because it's not the power just does not solely lie with the employer. You also come to the table with power because you have value, you have assets that you will be adding and pouring into that company to keep it moving forward. So use your power. Don't give it up for no reason at all, right? And a lot of times people tend to, and I used to be this way. I didn't have this way of thinking, like earlier on in my career. You just come to the table feeling like you're a beggar. Please hire me. But you do the other flip side is that you're in a place of power as well. Evaluate, and you do have the power to say, no, you know what, this is not a good match for me. But I recognize as well that for immigrants, they might not be in that space, and not necessarily immigrant, other people as well outside of that intersection. You just need to take care of the bills and home, and you have children to feed. So you just got to find a job. I get that. But if you're in a position where you can evaluate and decide if this is a good fit for you, then please be sure that you're doing that. So one, educate yourself on the local environment, culture, and whether you'll have psychological safety. Always keep your position of power when you're interviewing, and find your community. I think I just felt alone for so long because I just didn't fit in and I wasn't really accepted. People just saw me as a threat because of my resume and the way I sounded and the way I expressed and showed up myself at work. And it was so confusing to me because I'm like, isn't that the way you're supposed to dress and come to work? Right. And so, but then it's gotten I've understood more clearly now that there's a lot more forces within our Black community at play that we need to educate ourselves about. You know, the different break off of groups who are now calling themselves FBAs or ADOS, or people who see us as threat coming through the door. And so you need to be aware that, you know, with no action of yours, but you're just stepping into an environment that is already hostile to you, because you're an intersection. You're filling a space as an intersection as an immigrant. That's part of your identity. You didn't do anything. You applied, you came here, they said they wanted you, they hired you, but you have hostilities that you need to face. And so it's important for you to to first be aware, and then to educate yourself about how to respond and manage it while you're here.
And manage it well. Yeah. And community is powerful to do that. So communities, support system, really important. Thank you so much, Simone. This has been great. I could chat with you all day. You have, well, I can tell you're a podcast host, but you have a beautiful just voice that I want to listen to. I keep forgetting. Oh, I'm the host. I'm supposed to keep that going.
Sweet. That's so sweet. Thank you. I didn't feel this way. Initially, I was kind of like, you know, like, oh my gosh, I couldn't stand hearing my own voice. And apparently there's something about in your body when you hear your voice. It does something about going through your eardrum and whatever. And so I've gotten used to it. But thank you for that great compliment about how my voice sounds. It helps.
Of course. It's so funny because I think I'm the same way. I cringe whenever I have to listen to myself talk. I don't want to replay. And a lot of people talk about, oh, your voice sounded familiar because I listened to you. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry you have to listen to me. I don't like to replay myself back as much. I like to just go to my guest's voice. But all right. So there's a final question I like to ask before we finish. That is more of a cultural connection question. Is there anything else you want to say, you want to share before I ask my final question and close us out?
Any questions for you?
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we've covered a lot. There's a lot more I could say, but I think, you know, check out our podcast, and I welcome anybody who has a intriguing story that they feel like would be inspirational to people. You know, reach out and let's talk about getting your story on our platform, and so forth. So yeah, we're happy to provide and hold space for people who are in that intersection of maybe male, female, immigrant, Afro, wherever Afro affiliated, or you're from any other part of the world. We're here to hold space for you as you fit that immigrant identity box.
Thank you. All right. So my final question that I love to end with is a food question. If you were to share a meal with your coworkers, what would you pick and why? It doesn't have to be food. It could be a snack. It could be, if you were to sit at the table and bring something for your coworkers, what would you pick and why did you pick that?
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. I love mangoes, right? And part of the experience of having lived other places around the world, you will find that sometimes the pickings for food here can be slim because of just the marketplace and the way things are produced, right? Mass produced. So the taste isn't there. But I am such a connoisseur of mangoes and the different mangoes. And I grew up just eating them directly from the tree, unprocessed, no additives. And I tell you, if I could get like certain mangoes from the island and bring them here, I think I would really win over a lot of people. They would want to travel themselves during mango season from about April to August to just be in the middle of that and to really enjoy the authentic flavors and taste of mango, whether you eat it directly from the seed itself or you put it into a salad or you cook with it with your meat. There are so many ways to cook with mangoes, but that's one of my favorite fruits. I could eat it all day and not eat anything else.
Oh, I love that. I really love that. And you reminded me definitely of the barter system because I grew up in Nigeria and we have the same thing. Everyone has something in their house, and when it comes in season, then you take it to your neighbors. And then the neighbors will bring something too. And so you always have stash of different fruits and sometimes veggies. But that is such a beautiful memory. Thank you for sharing that. And now I want some mango. But it was nice chatting with you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the work you're doing. And we look forward to following up. So if you're listening, check out How to Connect with Simone. You have the link to the book, Decoding America. You have the link to our podcast. And you have a link to connect with her on LinkedIn. And then you can follow up as well with me if you have any questions.
We thank our listeners around the world, and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.